Welcome, one and all, to Last Stop Penn Station podcast featuring Cary Silken and Ian Riccaboni. They dive deep into Cary's wealth of stories, and no subject is off limits. From the world of wrestling to his ticket agency, growing up in New Jersey, drug-fueled underground days, hustling in the French Quarter of New Orleans, and endless days and nights in New York City, every story is worth telling.
Hello, welcome everyone to Last Stop Penn Station. I'm Ian Riccaboni. Our producer AJ from Bassan Creative and Web Design is with us, and our guest of honor, Cary Silken. Cary, last week we ended talking about portable glory holes, your multi-million-dollar idea.
The patent is in.
The patent, I hope so. We have enough listeners. You know, we cracked the top 20 of the most listened to. Our category on iTunes is journals and personal entries.
It's good.
And we cracked the top 20. So we have enough people listening that someone's going to take that idea.
We were right behind Oprah.
We were. Oprah charts very well. Oprah charts very well when she's
OFRA.
Oprah, yeah. So I'll tell you what, we have enough listeners. Someone's going to take that and run with it. You got to be careful.
Or maybe somewhere it's out. It's been out.
Right. And that seems like something that would have been invented.
I'd like to know, hello, listeners, the origin of the glory hole.
Yeah, we talk about it. And as you know, I won the highest student honor at NYU, one of the great universities in the country.
Well, as an esteemed sex educator.
Right.
But this doesn't even fall under the guise of sex education.
You'd think it does. So I used to give seminars on safer sex and on the idea of protecting yourself, the idea of consent, and the idea of engaging in any sexual activity. So I didn't have Glory Holes 101 per se in my back pocket, but in the sex education, things that I would do, we would talk about it, and we would, it would come up, and it would come up on, consent and what does it mean and so on. So
well, I'm curious where it harkens back to.
I bet it's older than we can even imagine.
Right.
Because
like to Roman times, to the days of Caligula.
I would say even before that. I would say the Egyptians, or, not enough is spoken about the Middle East, the oldest civilization in the world. You hear the Iron Sheik say, Tehran, Iran, the oldest civilization in the world. It is. The Middle East, whether it be Iran, Iraq, Israel, Palestine, you name it, some of the oldest civilizations between there and sub-Saharan Africa, I would imagine that's something that existed almost from the dawn of humanity.
Now, this is going to be very, nothing's politically incorrect on Last Stop Penn Station, but the confessional booths.
Oh, geez. Oh, my goodness. I hope not, because that goes against all consent, because when you go into a place that is show world, or you go into Playtime Boutique on Lehigh Street in Allentown, there is at the very least implied consent. At the very least.
Well, actually, in those places, now I've never been in the Playtime Boutique in Allentown, but I've spoken to some people that have.
Okay.
But in all those places, these adult bookstores, you usually see there's one consistent sign up.
Okay.
And you know what that is?
What's that?
Only one person per booth.
Aha.
But, that's the house policy.
Sure.
So they've posted that.
Right. Well, we talked about innovation last week. That's probably how you get around it.
Right.
So, geez, who was the first? I wouldn't stick that anywhere. It's dangerous, right? Don't you have any fear? You gotta have some kind of fear.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to do we still didn't get to the sex tour of New York City.
Right.
Where, of my time in the 70s and 80s and even up to recent years when I'd be walking around the city and out of boredom, just wander into one of these adult establishments, and we'll talk we'll talk in graphic detail about that. And the adult bookstores around. I've been in Amsterdam. Mm-hmm. I've been in the UK.
Yeah.
I've been to Italy, and all over the United States. The adult bookstore business is the cornerstone. The moneymaker is the booths and the cruising.
Oh, okay.
Now, I read a book one time about the history, and it's about the history of modern pornography. And I think we talked about this a little. Do you know what city modern pornography, as we sort of know it now, was sort of cultivated?
Edison, New Jersey?
No.
Okay.
No. Cleveland. Just like Cleveland rocks. Yeah.
Okay.
This man who, I'll find the name of the book for the next episode, but the guy's father had a newsstand. This is like in the 40s. And he realized that when he was a teenager, the guy from the magazine company would come in to take the old issues and bring in the new issues. And we mentioned that my cousin Mike, who's working on the Last Stop Penn Station memoirs, his stepfather worked for Hudson News.
Okay, yeah.
Which we still see in the airports.
Yeah, every airport across the country.
Right. So they would take the old issues, bring in the new issues. Well, when the guy got old enough to be able to drive, his father sent him to one of these distributors. And he also noticed, as he was a teenager, that his father had some nudist magazines.
Oh.
Under the counter.
Gotcha.
And so when he was going to this distributing place, he noticed that the guy had the nudist magazines, and he had early hardcore magazines. We're talking the 40s and 50s. And they also had stag films.
Oh.
8mm.
Yeah.
And it goes on. And within him telling the story of the rise of this business. And once again, I refer to this often. If you want to see this, a replication of this in a story form, check out The Deuce, that HBO show. So in the first year of The Deuce, it's 1971-ish, and they had prior to them inventing the booth, and they invented a booth, prior to having, the people would go into the porno store and they would put a quarter or whatever it was into a machine with a crank.
Oh, wow.
Baseball, football,
yeah, spin in a tank.
And you would be watching this sex film, but you were in public.
Yeah.
So one of the guys says, you know what? If these men could be enclosed, doing their thing, this could be a moneymaker. And that's where so in the early 70s, maybe the late 60s, they were also battling the pornography laws at the time.
Oh, okay.
It was a big schmoz with what was legal, what was illegal. A lot of the porno was being made in like Sweden and Norway and these other countries. But they invented the booth.
Wow.
For privacy. And then one of the guys thought, oh shit, what if we put a glory hole?
Oh, geez.
Now, the glory hole existed before the booths, obviously, as we were talking on last week. Thank God Ian is a great historian, talking about tune back, subscribe, talking about the origins of the glory hole, possibly going back to the Egyptian time, let alone the Roman Empire.
Sure.
But so where I was going with this was the adult bookstores, for them to make any money had to be cruising friendly.
Okay.
You don't know what cruising is. There's a movie. Did you ever see the movie Cruising with Al Pacino?
No.
Oh, man.
Okay.
You got to watch this
Yeah.
immediately.
Okay.
It's made in 1980.
Cool.
And cruising is a term of gay men that would be on the cruise, looking for pickup spots. And in New York City, you had the piers
Okay.
by, your old stopping ground.
Absolutely. Yeah. The West Side. Yeah.
Right. And it was a huge scene. Hundreds of guys. And it was outdoors or in cars. And but what I was going to say was these adult places, whether they're in Allentown, whether they're in Phoenix, Arizona, whether they're in Dubuque, if they don't allow cruising where they turn a blind eye, they don't do any business.
Interesting.
Because especially nowadays with,
the internet.
Right.
Yeah, you can. If you're not getting it for free, you can get it on demand.
Right. So, so that's it's a real interesting time. So if the business doesn't tolerate that kind of activity, they don't do any business.
Yeah. Well, as far as I'm concerned, as long as there's consent, as long as it's safe, as long as everybody's in agreement with what's about to happen, thumbs up.
Yeah. Excuse me. You used to walk through the Village.
Yeah. Loved it.
There was plenty of.
I used to do my best. I played music and I played guitar and harmonica. My best gigs were in the West Village. And those are the ones that had the most receptive crowds. Those are the ones that were the most engaged.
Were you on Bleecker Street?
I was on Bleecker Street. I went over to 8th Avenue, toured by the piers, by the water. I did a lot. There's a place called the Village Treehouse that had me in quite a few times. That was just off of 4th. If you took 4th down to 6th, it was 4th and 6th area.
Great neighborhood.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Only place that I've ever gotten catcalled also. So I loved it. I had a beautiful women's...
I don't think you're using the term right, young man. A catcall would be like being booed.
Oh, well, I was told that I had a wonderful jacket and that I should strut that ass. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's not a catcall.
It was a nice compliment.
There
Give me confidence. Go. Yeah. So, yeah. I really enjoyed the West Village. I lived there for 4 years, give or take. But yeah, just a great environment. Although I was informed that there was implication that you would be cruising if you were in certain spots. So I never wanted to give anybody the wrong idea. Not that I was worried anybody would think I was gay as a pejorative, but I wasn't looking to be with a man. I was involved with Sarah at that point. So,
But if Sarah wasn't around,
we've never talked about it, but it's
especially on the public forum here.
Sure. I mean, I think it's a spectrum, but we can go on from there.
Well, we're doing some abbreviated Last Stop Penn Stations. 3 weeks ago, we had the very popular Gurney episode.
Still hearing about it.
The week before that, we were just talking about, life, love, death, family, this, that.
Yeah.
And sort of the same thing last week, except my possible invention of the
$1 billion idea.
$1 billion idea. And real quick, because 3 weeks ago, we were talking about that Sinatra documentary, and I was talking about him and the JFK tie-in and the ups and downs of his careers, and then he did the movie From Here to Eternity. And one thing I left out, there was a great clip. He did not like rock and roll.
Really?
At all.
Wow.
At all. And there were other people who commented, because when this was made, Sinatra's been passed away for many years, but he was smart. So in 1960, there was a TV special, I believe it was 60 or 69 or 59 or 61, and they told him, look, you should have Elvis on.
Oh.
Elvis was smoking hot.
Yeah.
And there is this wonderful clip of Sinatra and Elvis, And I forget the two songs they did. One, they did each other together, but they did each other's songs.
Yeah.
Witchcraft was the Sinatra song that Elvis did, and I can't remember which Elvis song Sinatra did.
Blue Suede Shoes feels like one that Sinatra
could have been, but they were like combined and it's rhythmically compatible that they could switch, mid-song, and the movement, there was two very sexy men.
Yeah.
Elvis was still in his,
physical peak. Yeah.
1960, and Frank was probably
40,
45-ish. He always seemed mature, but you see these, like we're looking at the picture of him there.
Oh,
that picture, which portraying with Bruno and Jilly Rizzo, that's probably him in 1950.
Right.
Not 1965. Right. But yeah, that was one thing I left out. And another thing I left out was, this is from last week's episode, I'm coming in fresh off the beautiful, I am the last one for interior decorating. Thank God my good friend and longtime business associate, Joe, has a good, he's just good with that kind of stuff. And he was doing that. He was involved in interior decorating slightly, but he's got an eye for it.
Sure.
That's where I don't. So both you guys have been coming here, and in my living room, because of my cats, and we know those crazy cats pissing on the rugs, and you cannot get rid of the smell.
Sure. Even if you steam clean it, immediately if you steam clean it, still doesn't go away.
Right. Yeah. So now with the unfortunate passing of Lamb Chop, it was time to do something, and I just left it up. We have another friend of ours, a good friend of AJ and myself, and you may have shaken his hand at that Tull show in Bethlehem a few years ago. Our friend Dan from Lehigh Valley Flooring. Am I saying it right? And so Joe got hold of Dan. Joe picked, I'm like, well, put in carpet. He goes, we don't want carpet, just Joe. I'm like, what do you mean we don't want carpet? He says, what if you get another cat? I go, well, I sort of like carpet. He goes, no, we could put in hardwood floors and put rugs on top of it. So I'm like, okay. Joe's real good at this kind of stuff, but if he has an idea and he wants to do it a particular way, who am I to say anything? But I have this phobia.
Okay.
About people being not you guys being here, but people being in my house doing work. I'll ask your opinion in a moment. I have a cleaning lady. I still have her, but since the pandemic, I haven't used her, but I'm going to call her. She would come here once every 2 weeks. Really nice lady, Becky. Maybe she's a listener. And she would clean. She'd be here for like 2.5 hours. She would come on a Monday at like 4:00. And I don't care if it was she wouldn't come here if it was a 3-foot blizzard. Sure. But if it was terrible weather or this or that, I had to leave the house.
Interesting.
I just couldn't be here with the vacuum going. It was like nails on a blackboard for me. Or people working on the house. I don't know. How do you?
I used to be that way. The pandemic changed it because the house we moved into 2017 was built in 1964, and it has a lot of the original things, and it's held up well and was treated well and kept well, but it's had the same green carpet since 1988 or 89 or something. So we've had that torn out. We've had them redo the floors. We've had them spruce things up. And because of the pandemic, we just couldn't go anywhere. And we've had sliding doors replaced to make them more energy efficient. We've had other, different doors and this and that done. So we've had a lot of projects recently. We're going to have the kitchen redone.
So you don't get itchy when people are in your space.
I did. My house is smaller than yours, so it was even more of a on top of it. But, I've worked from home for the last 7 years. Mm-hmm. And so in addition to Ring of Honor, I keep a day job, and hopefully I get to pay for my kids' college. That's what we're on pace for that, which is awesome. But I keep the day job. I work from home, and it's had to be one of those things where I've had to live with, during the pandemic, my wife and my kids being at home, which is a blessing and a curse, because the kids want to know why you're not playing with them, and the kids want to know, Daddy, look what I'm doing on Nintendo, or look what I'm doing on my tablet. And you got to just kind of, oh, that's great, Zach. And you got to move on. But I've outgrown that fear. I've had that phobia, but I've outgrown it because of the pandemic, just because there's been so much noise, so much commotion.
I don't even like when the guy comes to mow the lawn.
Yeah.
It's only like 20 minutes. There's like 3 guys.
Yep.
Right? And I don't know.
I feel like I'm getting ripped off by the lawn guy.
Well, yeah, if you could do it yourself, if I was physically able to do it, I wouldn't mind doing it. But what happened to me with this flooring situation was the guys were coming on we're talking a week ago, Monday morning at 7:30 a.m. Now, somebody had to be here.
Sure.
Thank God for Joe, who volunteered to be here. Mm-hmm. Now, I could have woken. My house. It's not a palace, but I have downstairs where I have a TV, a bathroom, exercise equipment, a bed.
Yeah.
I could have went down there. I could have hidden the office and my bedroom. But what did I do? I am not going to be here. So what I did was Sunday, I drove over about a half mile to the Marriott. The Marriott Express.
What? I did not. This is a turn.
And
I did not see this coming.
I went up to the counter and I said to the young man there, I need a room for 2 nights. I was figuring I got to get the room for Sunday.
Okay. Yep.
Just so I could sleep Sunday night there.
Mm-hmm.
And then Monday, what am I going to do? It's like, I'm going to drive. I could just drive around. Or maybe I could stop at the casino. Or maybe if the weather's good, I could go to the park or this or that. But I figured, let me get the room for 2 nights. I said, how much is it? The kid says, well, it's $119 per night, sir. So I looked at him, and there was an article I read 30 years ago called "The Magic of the $20 Bill."
Yeah.
Now it's probably the magic of the $100 bill.
Sure.
But I was still basing it on the magic of the 20. So I said to the kid, I go, "What time's checkout?" He says, "Well, it's 11 a.m., sir." I said, "I think it's like the Harry Chapin taxi,
right,
scratch the bill.
Yeah.
As I pulled the $20 bill out and I go, "Here, my boy, can I check out at 2?" And he says, "Absolutely."
There you go.
So so Sunday night, I was here. Often AJ and I hang out. We've been watching The Sopranos lately. AJ's nice enough to just jump in on any episode because that's the kind of show it is. You got one day you'll watch it.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I stayed here Sunday night, watching some Sopranos, watching some baseball, reading the Yogi Berra book, and then I waited till I usually go to bed around midnight, so I waited till 11:30, and I moseyed over to the Marriott Miniature Express.
Oh my God.
And it was really weird being in this hotel room.
So close to your house.
A half mile or 3/4 of a mile from my house.
Yeah.
It was freezing cold in the hotel room.
Really?
I was having trouble working the heat.
Well, that's what me and Malonis and Todd Sinclair like. We like freezing cold.
Right. We talked about that in the previous episode. Right. Yeah. But anyway, I crashed there. And when I woke up, I usually go and get a little breakfast at Panera. So I went to Panera like I normally did.
Yeah.
Then I went back to the hotel and I hung out there till around noon. And finally, I surrendered and came moseying over here Monday around, oh God, it must have been like 1:30. And everything was disheveled. And the guys like only, you have these 2 rooms with the flooring.
Yeah.
And it was only like 20% done. And Joe was here. I'm like, how's it going? He goes, oh, they're doing great. Do you take a look? I'm like, yeah, great. So this is really enthralling listening in this episode. But I came back later around 4.
Yeah.
And these guys finished up. And Joe and
That's quick.
his another friend of ours, Buck, put all the furniture back, put all the pinball machines back. Joe was here again today, organizing some stuff, and it's over. But it was like a traumatic experience for me.
Really?
Yeah. I told AJ before. AJ came over last night, and I was like knocked out.
Oh.
And I crashed last night, and I slept really good. It's just something that beats me up. Do you have anything like that?
I got a couple. My biggest fear is the fear of outer space. So space wise, I'm claustrophobic. I like theme park rides a lot, but I get claustrophobic being with the buckle or the strap or the harness. Claustrophobic in cars sometimes. Airplanes, I'm all right because I think I'm more worried about different things. But I am deathly afraid of outer space because science says it's growing faster than the speed of light. If it's growing faster than the speed of light, that means it's growing into something. What is it growing into? So it's what the hell?
Well,
so yeah, that bothers me. Bet you didn't expect to hear that.
No.
So I talked to a good friend, BJ Whitmer, about that a lot. BJ and I, we talked about outer space, and he knows a little bit about quantum mechanics, which I was shocked about, and quantum physics. So we've talked about that.
Yeah, when does it end?
Yeah, which is, to me, it's a relief that it doesn't, that we don't have the answer. I prefer not to know.
It can't end.
It can't, and that's okay. I finally come to the realization that that's okay. But I worry about that. I'm worried about the kids in the bathtub. Like, so when I give the kids a bath, I'm deathly afraid because you can drown in 2 inches of water. You don't have to be a baby. You can be an adult. So I'm always afraid that if I look away for 1 second, Nora might tip over or Zach might goof around and then there's trouble. So I think those are the big ones. Yeah, I'd be afraid of a glory hole. I wouldn't do it. I'd be afraid. I just wouldn't do it. But
Okay.
it's not for me because I'm not sure what's on the other side, and I'm a faithful guy.
Right.
So
Maybe if you weren't married.
I don't know. I would try different things maybe, but that wouldn't be my go-to. I'd be too anxious.
Well, that's the allure of it is the mystery.
Yeah.
On both on either side of the wall.
And I think that's
go ahead.
Yeah, I think that's where my thing is. I'm a very anxious person. So the space thing gives me anxiety. The kids give me anxiety. I'm not necessarily fearful or annoyed by it. Whereas I think I'm more annoyed by the people in the house. As, hey, this is my house. I'd like quiet so I can listen to this work call or listen to I'm more of if it makes me anxious, that's what I'm scared of.
Well, different things make different people anxious.
Yeah.
So it's that's what makes everyone different.
Right. And your friend was feeling a little anxious when he called you.
Yeah, a very good friend of mine, and AJ called, and his parents are both in their 80s, and his it's a stepfather and his mom, and the stepfather hasn't been feeling well, and he's in the hospital. He's disoriented, and hopefully he's going to be okay. And I mentioned last week that I used to say to myself, and we touched on this a couple weeks ago. Last Stop Penn Station is supposed to be all fun and sleazy, and not that they're all fun stories, but drug-fueled past and this and that. Mm-hmm. But we touch on some serious stuff. So last couple weeks ago, we were touching on going to cemeteries and feel like good. And we were also talking about just going to your old house.
Right.
But my friend, his stepfather's sick. And I was telling him, he's not a very demonstrative guy, and he does not listen to the podcast. But I told him, I said, you've got to speak to your mom, because, when he gets released from the hospital, it's because they live on their own, and it's like, is the right thing for him to come back to the house when the stepfather was doing some, strange behavior where he really doesn't know where he is, kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I mentioned last week that, I've gone through this with my parents, and I was the one who would say, I hope I die before my parents do, because I'm not going to be able to handle it. Mm. But as it turned out, when I put down the drugs and put down the drinking in the early 90s, and my parents had moved down the shore, we're talking 91, 92, old man Kelly from Kelly's Pub in Hoboken, who I was still, before I moved out here, they moved there like in 88, and I'd go into Kelly's, and I used to, this wasn't true, but I'd say, hey, Cal, my parents moved. He goes, where did they move to? He said, they just told me South Jersey. And he would laugh. And then I'd go in I'd go there every day, but I'd go there, and like a week later, he'd say, hey, kid, did your parents tell you where they are? I go, oh, Cal, I told you, it's South Jersey. He goes, didn't they tell you what town? I go, well, they said it was a White House. So this would go on, and he would laugh. But my parents, I got clean we talked about the Super Bowl episode.
Yeah.
So we're talking about early 91, and I finally put down all the substances, and it took me 6 months to stop smoking weed. And so from 92 through 95, or through into 96, I was abstinent. And around 94, the time of the Gurney story, my mom, she developed MS. Oh. And my dad was diagnosed with, it was too late, and he had prostate cancer. Mm. And there was, I don't really know if it could have been treated or not. My aunt and uncle on my mom's side of the family, we always talk about Uncle Gunny, right, and my father's side. Well, my aunt and uncle, they were really my cousins. My Uncle Al and my Aunt Jane, my mom's side of the family, they were on top of things, because even though I was clean, I still was sort of disconnected. So when it came to this kind of heavy duty stuff, Jane and Al made sure that they were, and my parents, listen, they both smoked their whole lives. Mm. It's the way it was. Mm-hmm. And so my dad was told that he's, that the cancer is, it was basically past the point of doing chemo or doing radiation. Right. And it's just, so he was basically the caregiver to my mom. Mm. And as she was deteriorating. But by January-ish of 95, he tells me, I can't do this anymore. I can't do this anymore. I can't take care of your mother. He goes, I feel like shit. Mm-hmm. He goes, and here was a man who, when we were telling the story about driving past the Jewish cemetery with his friend Frankie and saying, Frankie, you're going to be first. And Frankie said, no, Philly, you are. So here was a man that was spooked of death, but yet when he got sick, and he was like welcoming it. And so at the time, I'm like, I've got to get somebody in the house. Mm-hmm. Now, if you were to get proper state approved help, licensed and bonded kind of help, yes, the county would send someone over once or twice a week for like no charge. Mm-hmm. But if you wanted, like they needed someone in the house 24/7. Mm-hmm. And we found out through Jane and Al and my other cousin on my dad's side, Bernice, who's still alive. She's a wonderful lady. She's almost 90. That they had these services that were like Eastern European and sometimes Jamaican. These women that would stay in the house all week, 24/7.
Wow.
And they would be there for 2 weeks and they would get 1 day off, but the service would send another person to cover. Now, this is 1995.
Yeah.
It was $500 a week.
That seems cheap.
It was cheap.
Yeah.
If you would have had the proper license, bonded, so on and so forth, it would probably have been $500 a day.
Right.
We're talking 24/7.
Yeah.
Because my dad was here's a really weird thing. Or when this was proposed to my father, he's like, I was talking about my phobia with people doing a little bit of work in the house. He was like, you think I want some woman in his house? I don't want anyone in this house. I'm like, Dad, you need the help.
Yeah.
And he agreed to letting this. Now, the lady that came from this service, there were these newspapers that were like Russian language or Czechoslovakian or Slovakian. And they had these, there was a section, like part of it was in Czechoslovakian or Romanian, part of it was in English.
Wow.
And we hired, someone gave us the name of a service that was good.
Sure.
So this lady came and she was originally there to help my mother and give my father a break. But what happened was, at first my father he was like, I don't want no one here. This lady, she was very nice, barely speak English, but she knew what to do.
Yeah.
And within the first 2-3, my father got used to it quick. But within the first month of her being there, my father's health went. It wasn't good to start with, but he was still taking care of my mother.
Yeah.
And his health went bad.
Oh.
And the cancer became bone cancer.
Oh.
Oof. And so now the woman is not only taking care of my mother.
Yeah.
My father is like, he was just, he could barely do anything.
Yeah.
And it was messed up. The lady was great, and that service was great. And
did you feel any closure? Closure's not the right word, but they welcomed you back in, and it had been a while. Did you feel? What were you feeling? I'm just throwing it out there.
Well, I think we mentioned in one of the previous episodes that it took like 12 to 18 months till my parents believed that I was not off the shit and that I wasn't asking them for money. I was doing good. And we spoke about this a number of episodes ago, where instead of me being the fucked up, missing Thanksgivings and holidays and birthdays, Cary, that My father was, this is before they got sick. Cary's working. He's working at a ticket agency. He's doing really good.
Uh-huh.
They didn't, all that bad, all that years and years of me torturing them. And I'll use a Yiddish word, all this, Joe Koff would use this. I've heard Joe have said, talking about the wrestling business, all the surus.
Okay.
Right? Without even understanding it, you know what it means. It's like all the nonsense and bullshit.
Yeah.
All the surus that I put them through, and surus is a nice way to put it, they just forgot about it. And instead of me being the missing son and gone to New Orleans for 3 months and then thinking, remember my father when I called him, he said, I thought maybe you were dead. I don't know where you're at. How do I know where you are?
Yeah.
What are you calling me for? So now I was like this wonderful son who's doing so good.
Yeah.
And
they're proud of you.
Yeah, they were proud of me. And when he got sick, man, it was bad. It was bad. So my friends, I didn't know AJ yet, and obviously I didn't know you, but my friends of that period of time, including my cousin Mike, would say, oh, you should go down and, spend some time. Now, I would go like every couple of weeks, but you knew that the end was coming, and you should go spend some time.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, but when I like, if you would have been my friend then, I would say, Ian, yeah, go spend some time. But then when I get there, it's like my father's miserable, my mother's upset. There's nothing to talk about.
Yeah.
My father, a lifelong sports fan, he'd be like, I don't even want to watch the goddamn Yankees, right? And so I would drive an hour and a half down the shore, and I'd be there for like an hour, and there's nothing, my father was miserable. He would sit there and say, I can't drive anymore. I have to sell my goddamn car. How come that happened to me? Like what?
Yeah, why me?
Yeah. And he'd look out the window. Some neighbor's walking down the street. How come that guy can walk and I'm sick? This kind of thing.
Yeah.
Happens.
Yeah.
And he was in the hospital. He'd fallen. Did I tell the story already?
No.
He withered away to. He was pretty. He wasn't heavy, but he was a real man. Looked like a man's man, and he lost. The shit was just eating him up alive, literally. And he's in the hospital, and my mother's home, and she's not in good shape. Thank God for that lady.
Yeah.
Who was there. So it was June of 95, and my dad's in the hospital. It ain't going to be long. And I was going to go take a ride down the next morning. Let's just say it was a Tuesday. So Wednesday morning, I was going to go down. Now, the aforementioned Bernice, father's side of the family, his mother, her mother, was my father's sister, my Aunt Betty, the one that had the shoe store down the shore, the gregarious one. It's 5:30 in the afternoon on Tuesday. She calls me up. She says, Cary, I'm picking up my mother and we're going over to the hospital. Why don't you come down? I said, Bernice, I'm going tomorrow morning. She said, Cary, come now. I go, Bernice, you and Aunt Betty are going tonight. I'll go there in the morning.
Yeah.
She's like, Cary, just come now.
Yeah.
I maybe went one more round with her and trying to tell her, look, I'm going to go in the morning. It's a big deal. She's like, Cary, just come now. Goodbye. I'm like, oh, fuck. So I get in the car. Off I go. I drive down to Tom's River-ish area. And I got there first. And I went into this nice new hospital, and my father had his own room. And he sees, and I come walking in, and he sees me, and he looks at me. He goes, "What the hell are you doing here?" I go, well, I just came. I said, Dad, I just came to see you. He goes, what the hell did they tell you? I said, nothing. And before I had the chance before the more nervous kind of conversation went on, Bernice and his sister came in. And that's when he got upset. Oh. He's like, what did they tell you? Why are you all here? Yeah. So he mellowed out, and I stayed there for maybe 30 minutes, and I told Bernice, I'm going to come back tomorrow. So I'm glad you came. Excuse me. So I drove all the way home, and my phone rings at like 3:30 in the morning, and it's my mom. The hospital called. Your dad died. Oh. So it was like Bernice just had this feeling. Yeah. So if I wouldn't have went, would I have been like, it wasn't like a really pleasant experience of closure. Yeah. You know, it was just very, I don't know if I'm expressing it right, but it's, if I wouldn't have went, would I have been like, oh, why didn't I listen to Bernice? Because it wasn't like a pleasant thing. And he was completely clear. Here's the thing. He was completely clear-minded. Really? As sick as he was. Yeah. And as bad as as skinny as he was, with the morphine drip, right? At least he wasn't in pain, but he wasn't like out of it. Right. He was very clear-minded. Yeah. And that was the end. Wow. You know, and my mom lasted another 6 months after that, which happens often. Yeah. But when that's going on, I mean, go spend some time. What you got to do is spend time now. Yeah. That's, I'm not trying to make you feel good. Well, no, you do that.
We're going down to,
and so does AJ.
Ocala. We're going down to Nashville to see my wife's parents. Right. It's been difficult with the pandemic. Normally, ABE has direct flights to both. You know, they have direct flight to Orlando, they have direct flight to Nashville. So you know, it makes it easy. But the drive's so long, it's worth it. I have a similar situation. My brother and my mom don't talk, and it hasn't been good for a long time. And I've been working on it.
Can I ask you why?
Similar situation. My mom had my brother when she was very young, 16 or 17 years old. And she was pregnant when she was 16. And it was a difficult situation. His dad left within a few weeks of him being born in Georgia. And my mom bought a Greyhound bus ticket and came all the way back, kind of tail between her legs to Allentown. You know, there was a lot of pride, and she ended up being a great mom and met my dad. But my mom's always been very protective of my brother because he's her baby. And it's one of these things where growing up, she never approved of anybody he dated. Nobody was good enough. He eventually got into a lot of trouble, and it was trouble with some things related to drugs as well. And what you're saying is resonating with me because I always got the impression that my mom could almost never trust my brother. And here I am going down to Orlando, seeing my brother, proud of everything he's done. He's been clean since 2002 or 2001 or even earlier, sometime before that. It's been almost 20 years. He's a great father. He's a great husband. He was the manager of a store that did $10 million in revenue and this and that. And yeah, it's just one of these things where she said some very hurtful things about him, his family, and I think it came from a bad place. I still think there's time, and I still think, like you're saying, the time is now. And I try and nudge them very gently when I can, especially now that they all live in Florida. They're only about an hour and a half away from each other. So over the years, I've tried to nudge. I've tried to extend the olive branch, but it's been some things, and there's some hurtful things said, and it's gonna take a bigger bridge, maybe.
Well, hopefully, your brother or your mother will just. I mean, if your mom called your brother, what, he's gonna hang up?
I don't know.
Well, hopefully there's been enough time that they could mend this.
Yeah.
Because if my parents found it within their souls to welcome me back and talk like I was the greatest kid of all time for my whole existence, and completely wipe out the decades of horseshit and tourists that I put them through, then there's certainly time for your brother and your mom to try to mend this problem. And thank you for mentioning that. I'm sure that wasn't easy.
Yeah, it's not something, I mean, I get along really well with my parents, and I get along really well with my brother, and it's a really weird spot to be in. So a couple of things that you were saying really started to hit certain points, because I've seen my brother experience them, where he would be, I don't want to say not welcome at a family gathering, but it was assumed, oh, he'd be late, or, oh, he might not show up, or he might, and, there's a couple of big moments for him where not only did he clean up, but he started to reach out when I was in college. Hey, if you're in Florida for baseball, you guys play in Tampa, I can drive down and see you. And he would drive 2 hours and come see me play. He'd pick me up. We'd go somewhere, I'd get approval from the coach. We'd go do something. So it's stuff like that I know wasn't easy for him. And yeah, I think your message resonates. The time's now, especially with COVID, you don't know when there's going to be another pandemic. You don't know when there's something crazy might happen. So if you're not making efforts to mend fences and things, you might be not focusing on the right thing.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, there's a nut for every screw.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to be funny.
No,
everyone is built differently, and I know myself, I try to shroud things and whatever. So it's, but yeah, it's good to talk about it, because people don't like to talk about this stuff.
No, it's tough. It's tough to say it in a way that acknowledges what's happening and doesn't hurt people's feelings. And I think that's been the struggle for me, because there's been times I wanted to sit my brother down and say, call mom. I know she's hurt you. I know she said some mean things and some horrible things. Just call her. And there's been times I've said the same to my mom, where, hey, I know you've said some bad things. I know you've done some bad things. Yeah,
but you got to let it,
Yeah, you got to let it play out.
Let it grow at some point. Real quick, before we close, not to end, I know when I got I don't know if closure is the right word, but when my father was really, really sick and he was coming down the home stretch, his sister Betty, who was with Bernice, who came to the hospital, her husband, my Uncle Nat, that owned the shoe store, he got sick and he passed away in May, a month before my dad died. Mm. So I went, and they lived down the shore. So I went down to my parents' house. I got my father in the car via wheelchair, and it was a nice spring day, and I had like the sunroof, and my father says, can you pull that sunroof down? I just want to feel the sun, right? So we drive over. I called ahead to Betty because I'm going to need help with my father. Mm-hmm. And there's some cousins who I have not seen, who I rarely see. There's my cousin Alan, who's on my dad's side. And they were all there because there was a number of, anyway, Alan, hadn't seen my father in many years, he came down to help me. And when he got down to the car and I opened the door, I remember he audibly, he didn't mean to, he went like, huh? Just looking at my father. He's like, Uncle Phil, right? And my father was like, hey, Alan, how you do? And it just, so we got my father up, and they were in an apartment building, like I think it was like Belmar, by Route 35. There were apartments, like high rise. And bringing my father in, and Nat my Uncle Nat, who died, who we'd known 50 fucking years, he was gone.
Mm-hmm.
And, my father knew that he's next.
Mm-hmm.
And my father wouldn't cry, but this time he did, just a little. And Betty, it was, but on the way back, driving him back to his house, to the house, I made a point. I didn't, whether it was right, wrong, or indifferent, I made a point to tell him, hey, Dad, I'm doing really good. I got like $30,000 in the bank, which is this was like an unheard of amount of money.
Yeah, I mean, that's great now.
Right.
That's a safety net for you.
And I've been doing good. I haven't had a drink or any of that other stuff in a couple of years. And he's like, well, keep it that way. I'm proud of you, and that was as close to some kind, I wanted him to know that because it took them so long. Why would they believe that I was doing good after torturing them from 11th grade up to the time I was like 35 years old.
Wow.
That's a lot of torture in there.
It is.
So, yeah. So, reach out to your friends that you haven't spoken to. Try not, it's easy. I know it's way easier said than done.
Mm-hmm.
Try not to hold on to grudges. It's just not worth it. Whether it's family or friends, it's too short. Because you don't want to hear just all of a sudden something, you get that call that something happened to someone, could be me. Oh, did you hear Cary died? Right?
Yeah, I mean, it could be any of us.
Right.
But that's what the pandemic certainly taught us.
Right.
So, yeah. Well, this was a heavy one. But next week, we're going to be on a more,
we'll be back to Glory Hole.
We bookended it, Glory Hole and Glory Hole. And then some sad stuff in the middle. Some inspiring stuff, though.
It's a sad song. It's a tragedy. It's a sad song. But we're going to sing it anyway.
We will. Spring will come again.
That's right.
Yeah. So I had fun, though, through the journey. And I appreciate you sharing that, because that's the important things that I think most of us will have to face, is the reality that, a good percentage of us, our parents, unfortunately, will go before.
Yeah, if things go in the natural order.
Right.
And who wants to talk about the inevitability of, elders dying?
Right.
You don't want to talk about it because you're assuming they're alive and well.
Sure.
But it needs to be at least thought about, or you could have some kind of handle on it. Because if I was able to get through it and take care of it with the help of some of my relatives, imagine having to go pick out a fucking casket and shit. You just do it.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll be back with some other lighter stuff. You have a nice time in the bubble.
Oh,
maybe I'll see you when you pop out of the bubble.
Well, by now, if I'm thinking this through timeline-wise, I should be out of the bubble.
You'll be out of the bubble
at this point, but we're recording it just so that we make sure we bring a new episode this week. And we keep promising the sex tour, so maybe that will come. I know we still have. I've been watching One Night in Miami over and over again. Just ever since it was nominated for the Oscar. It was Oscar nominated. I've just been watching it every day, and
one day you'll surprise us.
One day I will, and we got to talk about these biographies. There's some good ones. There's some bad ones. The wrestling ones. They're really interesting. We've been talking about off air. Stone Cold, Randy Savage. There's going to be an Ultimate Warrior one. I prefer Dark Side of the Ring on Vice myself. I think they do a better job of being honest.
Yes.
I watched the Brian Pillman sneak preview.
I haven't seen that.
It's on, they snuck it up on YouTube. It was kind of there.
Really?
Yeah, they just very quietly just put it up on YouTube. It was very cool. So, yeah, part 1's up by now. Part 2 probably aired, if I'm doing the math right in my head. So those guys are good. Evan Husser. And I had a fun moment where we saw Conrad. I was at the gym, and we get Vice on the gym TVs. And I'm exercising on the elliptical, and there's Conrad doing
Yeah.
Doing the Vice After Dark versions
At
of
the 2300 Arena.
Yeah, with Rogers Building. So hopefully we'll be back there soon. There's been some rumors. Maria kind of let something slip a little bit, which I think was okay to let slip, that we're looking at bringing fans back. So fingers are crossed. I think we're going to do one more bubble after the one we've just completed, and then reassess and make an appropriate judgment based on science and vaccination rates and all that stuff.
Well, I was talking to someone, I'm not going to put my head on the chopping block, but they seem to indicate that the next series of Ring of Honor shows, there might be people. The very next one.
Wow. Yeah, and I've heard Honor Club members might be involved as well.
Very good. Yet another reason to be an Honor Club.
Yeah, you can catch up with the great TV. We're doing all kinds of fun stuff over there. So, yeah. Well, this has been a very emotional hour once again. But we leave you with the weekend. We hope you enjoy your weekend. We thank you for listening this week on Last Stop Penn Station. We want to thank our producer, AJ. We want to thank Eric from Discover Pro Wrestling for doing the notes and the timestamps and all that fun stuff for us. The Micro Brawler is still gone. It is now legitimately going on eBay for
over hundreds and hundreds of dollars.
It's going for $20. So this is a better bet than most stocks. I should have loaded up. And we are going to have more details next week on the Hana Kimura Memorial Show on how you can watch it. We do believe Mike Weber and Fight TV is going to help us put that together and have that up. So hopefully by then we'll have some more details on how you'll be able to order it and support the Kimura family, through their loss. And celebrate Hana, celebrate her life as well. So,
very good.
Yeah, so thanks for listening. We'll be back next week with more Last Stop Penn Station.
We hail you for listening to Last Stop Penn Station podcast. Rate, review, like, subscribe, and share on your favorite platform. Connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, or at laststoppennstation.com.